some of these guys have got ambitions to get into millions. Or do you think that's manageable?
That's a running before you can walk scenario. Biggest thing with a prop challenge is once you get your simulated funded account, just get 1 or 2%. Don't try and make yourself 5-figure payouts are beautiful, great. But what's more important is the money in your accounts. A lot of people who've done finance at uni have said, why am I learning from someone who's clearly not running their own business? Why would you go and learn economics from someone who clearly hasn't made a lot of money from economics?
So we're back again with trader interviews at Alpha Capital Group, and we're starting off with a brilliant one again. James Corrigan is with us, all the way from Portsmouth, a bit of a pirate. He's moored the ship on the Thames and wandered over, and let's introduce you to him. Hi, James. Let's hear all about you.
Planty, I'm James. I'm from the lovely island of Portsmouth. Been there most of my life, so very closed off. It's a bit of a different scenario walking out into London, isn't it? Easily lost.
Exactly.
From Portsmouth, 27 years old. Spent a few years in Salisbury, bit of time in Glasgow, all over the place really, but mainly the UK, sadly.
Right, and you're from the UK originally, aren't you?
Yeah.
So, trading.
Oof.
What attracted you to trading? How did you start off? How long have you been doing it?
I think this will resonate with a lot of people. My trading journey started with a signals provider. Hear the people booing.
Flags up.
It makes me shudder now, actually, thinking about it.
What do you mean by that then? So lots of people won't know that.
You come across a post on Instagram. This was back in 2018. And you just see like the MT4 screen, the actual trade section. Someone's got a 50 lot trade on Euro GBP running, and they've got like a gazillion dollars of profit running.
Sweat dripping down the screen.
Yeah, and you're like, what's going on? Obviously, there's a Lamborghini somewhere in there. You're like, what's going on? And I don't know. You just keep seeing it more and more. That's how the algorithm works, I guess. So, the more you see it, and then
you've clicked on it once, you're going to have it forevermore. Yeah.
And then you've looked at someone's story all of a sudden, and they've seen you've looked at it, and they've messaged you and said, "Do you want to make an extra £100-500 a day?" Something that's incredibly unrealistic at the time for you for a day. If you've got a job, you're probably making 60 to 200 quid maybe, and you're like, oh.
And to be honest, people they're looking to knock it out of the park. Yeah. When you're working and you go back and you work out how much you need a day, 250, 300 quid's a really good after-tax earning. So it's and you balked at, is it? Yeah.
So you're thinking to yourself, why am I doing like a solid 8-hour day or 9 hour, whatever it is, for 100 quid maybe, whatever. And you're like, and this guy's just done an hour on a single trade and made £1,000. Yeah. You're like, I could be on a beach somewhere sipping a Mai Tai.
Looking good, Billy Ray.
Basically, but that's I think how your mind works when you first see it is you just think of what you could buy rather than what you could do with your life. You're effectively buying time, aren't you, as opposed to things. So I saw that, and then someone reached out to me from a fairly well-known group at the time. They were actually closed down by the FCA.
Okay.
And they said, if you just deposit £300 with our registered broker, that should be alarm bells to anyone now. We'll send you signals. You just follow them throughout the day, 10 to 12 signals a day, which is ludicrous.
Absolutely.
When you think about it. And you'll make about £300 a day. No mention of you might lose £300 a day. And I was like, how could I lose? It's like the extended
And is this
warranty.
the first time you've ever done any other kind of PA trading or anything?
No. So this was my first ever dipping my toe in the water, and I'm quite grateful for it, to be honest, because I wouldn't have probably got into it if I hadn't, seen it that way. And I did that, and I asked the guy, well, what sort of lot size should I be using? It was a Euro GBP trade. That was my first ever trade. Short, as I remember, which was definitely not the direction
you always got short at Euro.
At the time, it probably wasn't the way you should have been going. And he was like, it's 300 quid account, put a lot on, one whole lot, which is, at the time you're like, I don't know, just trust the guy. And that's practically your whole balance gone.
Yeah,
if you
300
lose.
quid.
Yeah. I think I lost 250 of the 300. I was like, what the hell? I was like, give them the benefit of the doubt, just a bad day, load up again, go again.
And you're getting no help here or feedback?
No, they're just snake oil salesmen for the most part, because they're getting a commission, obviously, from the broker. They're doing a CPA deal where for whatever...
What's the CPA deal?
So my understanding of it is they've partnered with a broker. The broker's got them down as an affiliate. and they've gone, how, if you get someone onto our brokerage and they load up X amount into their balance, you get a cut of whatever they lose of their balance, effectively. So there's already a conflict of interest, which is obviously.
But you've only found that out since at the time.
Yeah. So from
no
watching,
info and very little.
Yeah.
Probably not much on YouTube at the time warning you.
No. So I think it's only like 2019, 2020. We were talking about it earlier. Other traders, institutional traders podcasts, where they're telling you about all these conflicts of interest in the market, and you're finally thinking, oh, that makes sense. Everyone's trying to screw you, effectively. And they were, and it was so blatantly obvious. But obviously, when you've got no experience, you're just blindly following someone because they've got a nice car or whatever.
Because we've had some of our previous interviews, they've said they're making so much out of their affiliate side.
Yeah.
Don't necessarily need to trade, but I mean, we'll find this out from you. But they have a love of trading, which is why. Don't get me wrong. Carried on.
If you're doing affiliate work for the right reasons, great. But this was a clear.
That's a scam.
Yeah. I won't say it was a total scam because there were probably some people making some money, But
by definition, someone has to keep you in that game, don't they?
Yeah. So obviously, I have to lose for them to win, don't I? Effectively, that's basically how the market works. So I was losing money. They were getting the cut of the percentage. These affiliates that were leading you in, they were happy.
So what's we carry on with that? But what's your background, educationally or vocationally? And how did that make you feel being in that situation?
So I'm an engineer by trade, which is obviously numbers galore.
Yeah.
I absolutely hate maths with a vengeance. I like engineering and I hate maths. Figure that one out. But I like logic as opposed to numbers. They go together.
You like applying stuff.
Yeah. So I'm always quite a practical person. So I did lots of woodwork and metal work, and I liked measuring, angles and stuff, not necessarily doing equations.
And you do go out on weekends, don't you?
No. No one wants to listen to me talk about angles. No, but I liked building stuff, hands-on work, basically, hands-on engineer. Not one of these desk engineers. But, so it seemed quite logical thing to do at the time. You're making money by predicting.
So it must appeal to you because your logic's coming through, and then you're thinking, "How the hell am I getting done?" By all. So I presume that's why you want to carry on with it.
Would hazard a guess that the people that lose the most money in the markets are scientists, engineers, people who've got a logical understanding. Because I think the market's very illogical. You're saying this has happened, this should go down. Why is it not going down? Well,
this is like I do a lot of the fundamental stuff and trying to show people how it ties together. That is the frustration for a lot of people because it's different time frames and trying to prove that it all makes sense over time. But I think a lot of people struggle when they think it all is supposed to happen instantaneously and rule it off and move to the next thing. It's a connection thing.
I think that's every new trader's.
That holy grail. Yeah.
Well, that's like their second step of trading. The first step is just dipping your toe in and understanding how the candles work, and then the second is, there's news and it makes big moves, and if I just gamble on this and get it right,
it looks sexy.
Yeah, and you've read somewhere that a big reading on the CPI says X currency should go up. And then you wait for that day and you get a big reading on the CPI. Buy. Been stopped out or liquidated, whatever. Yeah, that's the annoying part as someone logical. And again, I suppose that's probably another conflict of interest in there somewhere. Someone's, told you.
We were talking about earlier, there's historically in the real world, it's known that people do mess around with seeking liquidity as it's described now, but basically ripping your face off and breaking stop losses and hitting target prices.
Yeah. Especially NFP.
When you get done both ways in the same minute, you want to tear your head off, don't you?
Yeah. But you get people in NFP going, you always get the fake out first and then the actual move, and then 1 week you just get the actual move and it just doesn't stop.
And run over like a bus. Yeah.
I'm not a fan of fundamental trading at the moment, just because I don't understand enough about it.
But I think it's like any of these things, and I know you're going to tell me about this in a minute. You've got to learn the technicals. That takes time.
Yeah.
Fundamentals, you've got to learn it. Nothing is a one-stop shop, and this really is a job.
Yeah.
And it works when you're functional about it.
Yeah. And that would be my first bit of advice: would be understand the technicals. Don't trade near news. Until you understand that bit, stay away. Because sure, you can be a purely fundamental trader, but I feel like if you're new to trading and you want to do that, it's almost just gambling. You're not that clued up on it. It's just,
there's space for both. I think it's finding that combination, because neither works on its own. You get all these apostles telling you that one and done, but on both of them, it's not. It's, so carry on then. You had your £300 disaster.
Oh, that was it. At the time, you've lost that 300 quid. You're like, oh, that's like 3 or 4 days of work. You're like, oh, I'm absolutely gutted. Little did you know, it'd get worse.
Pray tell. So how did you react to that, and what was your next step?
My next step was to look at different signals providers, and I was just seeing a common theme of, you can join, if you've got £500 spare, deposit in this broker. No other brokers, mind. This broker.
Just this one.
Because this is the best broker. And we'll make you money. And I was just thinking, I'm not doing that again. So I thought, I'll actually find a course from one of these signal providers following that. But yeah, and I did. And it was, it's only like a £50 course, which probably should ring alarm bells again. But do you know what? It taught me the very basics.
It's just trends. It's a peg, isn't it?
Yeah, trends, sessions, currency pairs, nicknames, because that's important.
If you can't make a mnemonic or an acronym, you've got that. You're not in this game.
Still, obviously, I'm short cable today, but it's. So that
Looney's about the best one, isn't it? It's most appropriate.
Or Gopher you got as well, haven't you? Gopher. And that was actually quite helpful, because that was trends, trend lines, Fibonacci, support and resistance, all not enough to build a system on its own usually, I think.
But this is appealing to your mindset, though, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm like, so this is, it works until it doesn't. So it's going to work maybe 3/4 of the time, and then, game over. But at that point, you're starting to think, I could probably do this on my own if I dedicate some time to this. And obviously, where you're searching all this sort of stuff on Instagram, you're getting fed more and more of it. And I come across a guy I knew vaguely through someone else, and I was like, well, if they trust them and they're mates with them, I was like, I'll have a look at their course. And then it was slightly more in depth, and knew a bit more what they're talking about. Again, just a normal guy who just got into trading through probably the same route, to be honest, and had some good success. You're looking at his MT5. He's got a decent balance. And back then you had the old real and demo on the MC4. They used to have a real flag in the corner. And it was like he had like a 50 grand account. It wasn't a rounded number, so you weren't like, he hasn't just loaded up a demo here.
He only wins 10 grand a time.
Yeah, but no, he was, using proper risk, making like £1,000, risking 500, so 1% risk. And I was like, okay, he's doing something right here. And I was like, I'll buy his course. It was about 300 quid or something, but it was quite in depth. It was good. If you'd done it flat out, you'd probably be sat there for about 12 hours looking at stuff, and some videos and all sorts. And after that, started to develop my own system. Psychology still absolutely trash, so that didn't really matter. But so I was building a system, top down sort of procedure, looking at where it was on the daily. Oh, look, we're trending up here. Down on the 4 hour.
Into your time frames.
Yeah, so he was quite big on doing a top-down analysis, which
I think you should.
Yeah, is if you're going to do that, top-down, not stupid doing it the other way, but so you're like, we just bounced off a trend line here. There was support there as well. Here's the resistance at the top. I'll enter here when I see a nice big bullish move. Target the top of the channel, stop below it. Yeah.
It's a starting point.
Yeah, and it worked most of the time. And you're like, okay. But I think the difference between a system that's got a 50 or 60% success rate is your mindset. Because if winning 60% of the time, and then you put all of that on a single trade, because you're like, I want to make it big.
Yeah.
You're going to be like, this is a rubbish
and
system.
Straight away, you've broken your systematic rule.
Yeah. So I had no rules at the time. Well, very loose rules. No sort of solid mindset for what I wanted to see and how I was going to hold a trade and how much I was going to risk.
How were you? So in those early days, you were a 6% win rate then, were you?
It was a decent win rate, 55.
60-40 is good, isn't it?
Yeah, not great risk reward. It's sort of 1-to-1. So
sure, but
it still wins.
Over time, that gets you there. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but because of the nature of not understanding my own mindset and the psychology.
This is so important.
All going down the toilet. Yeah. So you can have whatever win rate you want, whatever RR you want. Well, yeah. If you are going to suddenly think, oh, I'm beating the market, I'm the god.
Well, this is it. This whole hubris thing comes in, doesn't it? You're better than everyone else. Master of the universe, I call it.
If you slip up, the market always wins.
Yeah.
It's going to take whatever you've got. And it did, over and over and over and over. I was quite slow to learn that. So
what triggered that for you? Was it literally the negative balances of doing it?
It wouldn't be so bad on a daily basis. You'd lose a couple £100 a day, win 100, and then you'd look at like the monthly breakdown names before, and you'd be like, Christ, that's like a half a yearly salary gone. You're like, what am I doing?
So what time frame do you trade in?
Now, an hour,
and
the hour.
In the early days, what were you doing?
Everything,
right,
all the way down to. I never really dabbled with the 1 minute because that didn't make sense to me, just because it's so erratic. But all the way down to the 5 minute, I'd take screenshots and save all my analysis, and I'd have about 7 different, monthly, all the way down to the 5 minute. And I think when you're doing that, it's good to get used to, journaling what you're doing. But I think it starts to confuse you if you're looking at the daily chart and you're seeing.
Because you've already mentioned that you're back testing, so you're back testing and journaling.
Yeah.
And were you doing that from the off, or is that something that you had to develop when you had the psychology issues?
So that was. Yeah, I think when you're new to trading and you've back tested 1 or 2 scenarios, you're like, oh, it works.
Yeah, I don't want to look at the ones that are losing. So
lose back out the market. Excuse me. And so it's back testing something I think I started doing after getting pounded so many times by the market.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I've really got to actually work through 100, 200, 300 scenarios here to understand where, what I can do in a row, how many losses I can take in a row and sustain myself. But back then.
So you hear a lot of this spoken, and I imagine for new people out there, what then, having done back testing and you start to get confident, how often do you now find a signal or tend to trade? Do you trade loads of times a day, or is it you're literally waiting for an opportunity?
So back then, like 2018, 2019, you're looking at 50 odd entries a day.
Yeah.
Just screen on the phone.
You will not defeat me.
Yeah. Now, once or twice a week at most.
Okay.
Quite often, none in a week. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. That's quite interesting, because you said you look at a 1 hour time frame, and yet you're being very specific on entries. People would think that's an in the middle time frame, and you'd expect you to be doing 3 or 4 a day and blah blah. So that's proper discipline, isn't it?
It's once you've actually got a rule set, you find very little scenarios you can trade, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think people,
it's a wonderful thing, and get this out there to people.
The less scenarios you find, I find quite often, if you've got a decent system that's back tested, obviously, the less scenarios you find, the more quality you're going to find generally, I think.
Yeah.
So you'll find maybe, say you take 1 trade a month and it's a good 5R and you've risked, on a bigger account, $2,000, 10 grand in a month. I think a lot of people would be quite happy with that.
Exactly. And
one trade.
How little stress if you did it that way.
And it might run for 4 or 5 hours, whatever. That's £1,000, 10 grand in 5 hours. Who's going to complain about that?
I know. And like I say, you annualise that, as I always used to say.
Exactly. It's
So within that, we haven't really touched on it. You said you're an engineering background. You're still working as an engineer?
Yes.
Okay. So how do you split your time? And
so I generally get up before work and do, because I trade mainly London session. New York, I've learned through the back testing, is no good for me.
What, the whole session, or just the fact that it has weird openings and ends?
At the moment, it's
everyone goes for lunch.
Yeah,
I don't think anyone's watched Wall Street lunches for wimps.
That's it. Especially at the moment where you've got like the daylight saving changeover. You're like, NFP's at 1:30, and you look at your phone at 1 o'clock and it's what the hell? But I usually hit the crossover and then just be done with it, because I find if I'm getting to 2-3 o'clock here in the UK, it generally, your liquidity's drying up, isn't it? Your volume's drying up. It's just going to trickle in one direction generally, or whipsaw its way along, whatever. But I find in London session, I don't generally trade the open of that. I wait until mid-morning.
So it's sort of 10 o'clock.
Yeah, and then you can really sort of find a scenario where you can just set and forget. That's, there's no point in being glued to your phones. What's going to happen is going to happen.
Yeah. That's something to get over, isn't it? If you've got a system, you've got a stop loss, let it play out. Otherwise you're kicking every ball, and it's a nightmare, isn't it?
If you've set a stop loss, you're expecting to lose 1% of your capital. You've come to terms with it. if you lose 1%, it's, well, I've lost what I said I'm prepared to lose.
Do you tinker around with anything? Do you move stop losses or? I end up being a bit like the Claudio Ranieri of the Tinkerman.
I don't generally move my stop loss because I feel like, because quite a lot of trades sometimes you get a whipsaw effect where you'll be up a bit, down a bit, up a bit, and then you might close yourself out and miss out on 4% or something like that. But I find the risk of losing 1% by not moving your stop is nothing compared to the risk of losing 4%.
That's messed up your back testing, isn't it?
There's plenty of people who move their stops, and that's obviously built into their system. I know a lot of people that would rather just be closed out at break even and go again the next day. I'd rather just take the loss.
So that's another thing that comes up, because if you're in drawdown and stuff, you're absolutely obsessed with break even, the break even-itis. You end up losing the upside of the trades that you know are going to work.
Yeah.
So leave it alone.
I think it can work quite well for if you've taken half the position off the table and you're just going to let the other half run overnight.
So you've got a freebie.
Yeah. So you've already banked some, and you go, I'm going to leave this overnight. There's news overnight. I'm going to put my stop loss above the break-even point, at which point, it's a win-win scenario. And if it runs all the way, then great.
Brilliant. So I've got you jumping backwards and forwards here. So we've now... No, this is where I want you to be. So you've come through that, you've started to do your back testing, you're now getting a feel for it. Have you used anyone... Has anyone given you any help? Or like Alpha Capital gives you great support, and we're doing more on the psychology side. How did you physically get over that? How did you...
So moving on from the crap psychology of 2019
exactly.
into... I think 2020 was quite an interesting year for trading.
Just
I think a lot of
the right
people...
way. I mean, that was our biggest ever year in the markets.
Yeah, that was... I did really good and really terrible simultaneously that year. And I think it's quite almost a privilege to have traded through that, because you gain a lot of...
Well, you suddenly got fast-forwarded a number of cycles into one. So, there's stuff happening now.
And you can also factor in stuff like that. Now, if you've just traded, like, I don't know, 2017 to 19, that was, I think, quite a quiet time in the market. You just generally got trending
up.
Yeah. And it was, easy enough to make money in a trending market. But when you've got erratic, what was it? The Dow dropped 15,000 points or something. I think you had
40% pullback at some point.
And you get fantastic entries on that, because you're like...
That's caused all sorts of problems. Basically, 40% in 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And, that's caused a lot of problems for long-term chartists. What the hell was that? Was that a proper top, or was it just a
And I still think it's causing problems now, because obviously a lot of the common advice is, invest into index funds, 8% a year. And you're like, at an all-time high, can I see this going another 8% over the next few years? You're like, well...
Yeah, it's tricky. A lot of people, bears are getting squeezed to hell, aren't they? It's one of those where sooner or later everyone throws a towel in and has to follow it. That's when you get worried, I think. At the moment, while they're still advising you to hold off, you stay in.
The aggressive squeezes, I think, is quite interesting, because a lot of people have just... had a tough day there. It's got to be worse for him when it turns around. But
so P&L in the early days, then you're just sorting your system out. You making money straight away, or
absolutely not? No.
Right. Talk us through it.
I'm just funding the market at this point. But I think back then, you look at the money you're losing, you're like, this is heartbreaking. What could I have done with that money? But I think if you look at it over the long term, don't quit.
So it's money. You don't make mistakes. You're educating. Really,
yeah, you're paying a very expensive fee to be educated, but it's a good education.
Yeah,
you're spending 45 grand to go to uni, which you're...
They mentioned that on the radio today. And that's if that's at the bottom end.
Yeah, and you might get a completely Mickey Mouse degree for 45 grand, and you might end up working, stacking shelves or something, which is not a problem. But if you paid for a degree, you're
expecting big time. Have you been to university?
I have not, no.
So what made you make that decision?
I'm not a very sit down and learn kind of person. I'm quite fidgety. I like to be doing stuff. So,
but this is important for the community, because there's lots of people like that. And again, one, is it something I can make money out of? Should I be doing what everyone else is doing? You don't have to. This is a chance to make your life, isn't it?
And I think that's a nice thing about trading is, obviously, if you go to uni, you go to LSE or somewhere, and you're learning economics, great, they've set that course. They know what they want you to learn. But if you're trading, after a couple of months or years, you know what you want to be learning, as opposed to you might get some drivel added on it.
Yeah, a lot of noise, don't you?
Yeah. So
Sorry.
you can you can tailor your learning, or you can have someone who's done it before. You know, why would you go and learn economics from someone who clearly hasn't made a lot of money from economics? That's the whole uni thing for me. Is you go to uni and you might learn to trade, you know, for the banks or whatever from someone, but if it's just a uni professor, have they done that? And is the Rolls Royce parked outside? Or,
it's a classic, isn't it? They teach when they can't do it. Yeah.
So learn from someone who's been there and done it, I think. And, you know, if you're a uni professor, sorry, but it's, you know, a lot of the subjects, great, you're the expert, but I think a lot of the finance ones, a lot of people who've done finance at uni have said, or business, that's one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Why am I learning from someone who's clearly not running their own business? Doesn't make sense. So yeah,
you've got to be there on non-farm payrolls day and getting ripped and going, I'm offside. What do I do? I'll leave it. Oh no, it's gone again. Like, you know.
Yeah, and the sweat's running down your head.
You've got to feel the pain and the blood vessels going. You know?
You're long and you're watching that red cat shifting the screen on MT. You're like, that's a terrifying moment. And if you've been there and done it, you can kind of, or if someone's been there and done it and they can tell you, well, this is what I did wrong. I think that's more valuable for. That's better.
That's a good point. That's a point that I've been trying to make to people. It's not, they're not mistakes. It's learning, but also this is a 51-49 game to be onside. Yeah. I'm not hearing hardly enough from people saying about their losers.
Yeah.
And yet probably if you spoke to people, they don't remember their wins as much as they remember the bad losses.
Oh, so the good wins I can barely remember. The bad losses are scarring.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just the nature of it. It's human nature, isn't it? You'd rather not lose $50 than, you know, I can't remember what there was a saying. It was like humans are much more focused on not losing $50 than making 100.
This is it. If you obviously see those market wizards, and it's all like don't cut the winners, and it's so hard not to. You want to capture it in, and you only ever seem to remember being offside. Yeah. So then you get nervous about it, don't you? So,
and that's a common rabbit hole, I think, or trap even you fall down is. I know I have is. You've got a trade and you've got your 1% risk, your stop loss there, your 3% profit. You start going to profit. Like, oh, that's a nice bit of profit. I'll bank that.
Yeah.
Over and over, and then you let the next one run all the way to the stop loss because whoever cuts losses early. Yeah.
And this is
quite rare.
Putting a line through it is the hardest thing to learn and accept. Yeah. Because I was saying that to someone before, the amount of times you get hit on your stop loss and it goes off to the moon. But it's better to make a decision than not.
Yeah. I think that's
And in life, I think that's the thing. You know, make a decision. If it's wrong, you can react. But making no decision, you've got nothing. Yeah, you've got no excuse then.
There's two extremes, isn't there? Yeah. There's the people who are too trigger happy, any opportunity they want to get in, and there's the people who are too scared to pull the trigger. They've seen everything line up in their plan, and they've gone, "Oh, but what if I lose?" And it's like, yeah, but.
So in the early days, if you're losing, are you straight back on and buying another challenge? Or?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Just rinsing them. I think the way you look at a prop firm, it's a bit more painful when it's your own funds blowing into the market. You know, you've got £1,000 in an account, you've blown £1,000. You put 80 quid into a firm.
Did you ever consider investing your own money, saving it up and using your own funds, or did you think this simulated thing would be the way of going?
I think, so I started in 2018 and I think the prop firms only start to, I know, you know, certain ones have been around for a while, you know, decades, some of them, but a lot of the ones that you see advertised now have only sprung up since like the beginning of 2022. Yeah. And I've just been trading my own funds up till then. And it's a bit of a different mindset, I think. So if you've come into trading straight into a prop firm, I think your mindset's going to be different. It's a lot more painful losing your own money, obviously. Yeah. You know, if you lose 10 grand, that's 10 grand of your own money. If you pay 80 quid for a firm challenge, that's 10 grand. And you blow it, you've lost 80 quid, haven't you? It's a whole different...
Yeah, it's good psychology, isn't it? I mean, I wish this had been around when I was growing up.
It's fantastic.
It's been amazing, wouldn't it?
I wouldn't say it was a win-win situation, but it's a heavily weighted win situation, yeah.
And you hear that, like the industry, everyone, you know, people are out to not only scam you, but they want to see the losers. Do you get that feeling, like Alpha Capital, we're big on wanting to take you to the next level and try and educate you? Do you feel... safe in the industry?
Yeah, I feel like a lot of I've been with Alpha probably, I've been the longest of the firms that I've traded, but a lot of the other firms, I don't feel like they're trying to screw you. I feel like I know it's been in the news, some of them have actively been found to be trying to do that. But I think a lot of them, their intentions are in the right place, it's just really poorly executed. Whereas with Alpha, when I first started seeing them pop up on Facebook and stuff, George's face on the video grinning at you, I was like, that looks interesting. It was
just talking in a slightly different
going to be
way.
Brutally honest, it looked professionally done on a budget. And I was like, these guys are trying to do something good, as opposed to these firms that've got millions of dollars to pump into their ad campaigns. And I was like, I'll have a look.
More honest,
yeah, that was it. And it's, George is about my age. You just look and you think, there's a guy I can relate to, and Alex and that as well. And when you join the group,
Mad Geordie, you can relate to him. Well, I suppose you are from.
My mum's from Newcastle.
Yeah, well, there you go.
So there you go. She loves that. But so, and as soon as I got into the Discord, not even that, as soon as I joined Alpha, and I'd dropped a message in the Discord, Alex reached out and said, here's my number if you've got any queries.
When I first got together with these boys, and I'm hearing all that, I'm thinking, Alex, give over. There's no way you're talking to these people.
And he does.
He literally is. And
he does.
And I'm like, no wonder the bloke's stressed out.
He must have 6 or 7 phones.
Yeah.
And it's just insane, because I've messaged him. I don't like to bother him, to be honest. If everything's going fine, let it be.
And you'll get looked after better if you're that. It's,
and if you're polite, always be polite. Don't be rude to the staff. Right, that's my biggest pet peeve.
I don't remember reading that book, though, do you? Like the ruder I am, the more I get.
If I put exclamation marks and caps, people will pay attention to this. No, if you're kind to them, Gerard, I've spoken to many, many times before we had this big influx of new people. He was always very active. I know he's still there in the background, but if I had an issue, I'd message him, let me get that rectified for you, here you go, that's problem solved, have a good day. Yeah, you too, mate.
Did you ever go through an account process with him and have a look how you were doing, or did you not need to do that?
I did an interview just over a year ago with him,
right.
Just over Zoom, and he went through the psychology and my strategy and stuff then, but he does check in with you and does run he was offering free set up run-throughs to see where you were going wrong, why you were doing what you were doing, which quite often you can't explain. All for free. He'd sit there for a good hour. You could book in with him, and he would just go through all this for free. Yeah, I mean, his own time.
Some of the stuff that we offer at Alpha, for the price point,
no one else does
zero
that.
Is amazing.
No one else does that. You get big, other firms. They've got tons of people in Discord. They've got a community manager or a trader success manager, whatever they're going to call it, and you can't reach them for shit. Whereas at Alpha, if you've got an issue, support tickets now are the thing, aren't they? On the Discord, generally, they'll get back to you in about 5 minutes, if not quicker. Problem solved. If you're kind to them, very helpful, no problem. Other props, I've put in support requests weeks ago. Yeah, still waiting. Nothing back. Still waiting.
And have you ever had a non-payout from anyone?
No.
Right, so you've been.
I'd just say, I'd say probably 90% of my payouts have come from Alpha, so I can't generally speak on that. But I have been paid by the other firms, no problems. But Alpha is just smooth. They're actually predictably smooth now, so I know when it's coming.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, you almost feel like it's imposters coming into the Discord because I don't know where they're getting all this nonsense
from. You get
from.
people say, I wasn't paid out XX, I made a 10 grand profit and they've not paid me, and you think, well, you've done something wrong then.
Yeah.
Simple.
Fairer than fair is what all the evidence I've seen.
And then you'll see Alex pop up and he'll say, call me. And you think...
it's going to be a painful call.
Yeah, and then suddenly you notice that they're gone because they're doing something scammy or fraudulent. Yeah. And that's just not fair, is it? So
that's the essence of Alpha. You play straight and you will play straight back.
Yeah. It's been the most helpful firm. I've dealt with quite a few, and Alpha feels like home. It's my favourite one to be in. So, you know all the moderators, all the people, you meet new people.
Absolutely,
as well.
I'm really glad about that.
Yeah, it's good.
And the fun side of it, we try and push that. There's a bit of fun going on in that Discord. It's getting a bit crazy now on the amount of people, but
it's just waves.
But in the early days, you probably found it.
Yeah, so it was
very different, isn't it?
It was a social setting back then. I mean, how many people are in there now?
65, 70,000.
Yeah, so this was probably when there was about 5,000 at most, probably 4,000 of which weren't active, and the rest just kind of got on with their own thing. You could just have a chat with the other traders, which you still can in the certain groups, but in the general chat, it's just banter and stuff, and people taking the piss out of each other.
It's almost become the meme academy, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has. It's getting a bit a bit much in there. Some of the, again, like I said earlier to you, just some people are just rude. These people are trying to help you at Alpha. Be kind to them. They will help you.
So you burned through a load of accounts, so I'm going to take you back. We're jumping back again.
I was trying to get away from that.
I know. Well, you brought it up, so we're going to mention
Brutally honest, yeah, I've burnt through that inactive tab on my dashboard.
How long did it take you to settle yourself down?
I actually passed my first ever challenge I took with them, which was a 50k, and I got a payout from that, and I thought I was God.
Yeah.
I was humbled very quickly.
Yeah.
And I think once you get into that drawdown...
You're on a blacklist at that point. You're going, who's this guy?
I must be now. You get into that drawdown, don't you? And I think your psychology goes a bit... When it's a chunky drawdown, you're like, well, I've got to full send this account now to get back out, and then game over. But after that, I was just taking 25, 50k challenges, blowing them, getting to phase 2, thinking, oh, I'm nearly there.
Do you have a sweet spot for the size of challenge? Does that affect your psychology at all or not?
The ones I have the best success rate with are 100k.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know, it's just a nice rounded number. No, I don't know, to be honest. I don't know. The 200Ks, I've had a couple of 50s, I've had one or two. I've had a 10k. That hung around for a while in drawdown, just... but the hundreds are generally... I don't know what it is. An 8k profit target on a 100k account as opposed to a 16 on a 2 just psychologically seems different.
If if you're happy with a lot size, I think you need to find out what your lot size is. You're happy, and then do it backward facing, don't you?
Yeah, I think that's it, and that's what I did was find out what lots I needed on the 100k because that's a nice rounded account. You could do the same on a 10k, and then if you go to a 200k account, you just double it. 50k, half it, whatever. If
you're being rational.
Yeah, yeah.
Which we talked about.
Yeah.
So how much do you manage in this simulated fund world? How much have you got going at any one stage?
200 is what I've clung on to.
Right, okay. Have you got some of these guys have got ambitions to get into millions. Or do you think that's manageable?
I think that's a running before you can walk senorio because a lot of these guys come in have never had a funded chat. I've spoken to some of these guys. They're like, oh, I'm getting funded with Alpha, never been with a prop fund. I'm going to get a 200k account and then I'm going to scale it all the way up to 1 million. You're like, just get a few payouts first.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing with a prop challenge is once you get your simulated funded account, just get 1 or 2%. Don't try and make yourself 5-figure payouts are beautiful, great. But what's more important is the money in your account.
That'll take care of itself.
Yeah.
Get the systematic
so
going.
If you've got a 100k account and you make 1.5 grand and you've got your fee to come back with that as well, that's, 2 grand that you didn't have last week. So
are you net up on doing all this?
Yeah. And that's what I was just on a 200k account accumulating 1 or 2%. Withdraw 1 or 2%, withdraw, and it just builds up. And once you've got a decent backing, you can maybe up that slightly. And
what about these people who give up their day job to do it? Are you one of those? Do you think it's viable?
It's viable, but my best trading comes from when I'm distracted, which sounds funny.
Right.
I like to have my mind occupied, so I'm not constantly looking at the charts, adjusting things, because I'm prone to that. If I'm looking at the chart, I'll start doing things.
Yeah.
If I look at the chart, into the trade, that's it. Analysis paralysis as well. You think, oh, I don't know what to do. But
because that is the key. We talked about this earlier. It's not losing is as important as winning.
Yeah.
And it's kind of making those less frequent and not trading.
Yeah.
It's once you get into this habit of trading every day, very difficult to break it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably setting you up for really spotting the good trade, isn't it?
I always say to myself, if you can't go forwards, it's better to sit in neutral than go in reverse.
Yeah.
Stay where you are. If you're not sure...
Then all the demons come out of the closet and
and they go, all up that lot size and go. But you're like, no, I'll be happier waking up tomorrow with the same balance I've got now than if I'd entered a stupid trade that didn't fit my plan and I've lost 2 grand, 3 grand. That's going to hurt. Don't do it. And that takes a few years. It did for me. of painful learning to get to that point. But if you stick to it, you can do it. I'd say I was one of the slower learners, so you can definitely do it.
Right.
Yeah. A lot of guys out there, 6 months in, they're doing fine. They're doing great.
Yeah,
My
no,
mind
it's a
wasn't
common
built like
theme,
that.
this, you know.
Yeah.
There's so few people who can come in and just make this happen overnight. You've got to do some of the hard graft, haven't
Yeah.
you? It's,
You just don't be jealous of them. They've got a talent. Your talent might be elsewhere. They've got a lucky talent of making money.
well, you know,
Great for them.
somebody
Yeah.
out there gets the 10 heads in a row, don't they? It's like, you know,
Exactly.
by definition, it's a probability. It's,
Yeah. And if you throw enough mud at a wall and it'll stick.
Yeah.
You're going to learn.
We're full of all these phrases.
Oh, love it.
We invent a quote today.
I always think about where these quotes come from, actually. He's been sat chucking mud at walls. But
That's where you were going wrong, wasn't it?
yeah, stick at it is the big. Who likes a quitter anyway? But if you've dedicated your time to it and you've already invested money, you might as well get it back.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's only so much.
As like Louis said, it's only on loan to the market.
Yeah, just keeping it warm.
Yeah. So you say you like to be distracted. What do you do to get away from trading? Have you any hobbies that really help?
The gym's quite a good one. I used to be a swimmer, so
Oh, really?
yeah. So you can't take your phone in the pool. So that's a very
That's a
simple
start,
one.
isn't it?
You've got a trade running. Tough luck if it hits stop loss. Great if it hits your TP. You can't do anything about it.
And this fits in with all the psychology. It's like keep yourself healthy.
Yeah.
You know, you've got to make sure that happens and keep that in the routine.
Yeah.
Whether that's before you start in the morning or you've got a particular
Yeah.
time of the day.
And I always say, if you've got a funded account, have a second phone and only have your account on that second phone and leave it when
So
you're
you know
going
it's
places.
specific.
Yeah,
Right.
so you've got all your other apps on your normal phone, your day phone,
I thought you
whatever.
meant for the burner and the information.
No. No, I think that was one of the biggest things that helped me. I used my old phone, deleted everything off it,
Yeah.
everything, just installed MT5, MT4, whatever, loaded up my funded accounts on that. And then if I'm going to the gym and I've got a trade running, I'll leave that phone at home. So I can't
I've got to say that I've only been doing these interviews for a while. That's one of the best bits of advice I've heard. That's really good and hopefully
Yeah.
useful to people out there. Consider it. Just compartmentalise.
In all
what
honesty,
you're doing.
if it's on my phone and I've got it on me, I'll be looking at it and I'll be pissing around with it, the trades,
Yeah.
which never ends up good. If I've entered a trade and I leave my phone at home and I've gone to the gym and I've got my normal phone for music or whatever and people can call me and I'm looking at the chart and my trade's hit a stop loss, I can't do anything about it. I can't revenge trade because I've not got my phone. Just leave it in your bag or at home in the
And
car.
do any of the bad ways still come back to you, despite you being
Absolutely.
disciplined?
I'm far from perfect. Yeah.
So it's not, people got to realise this. There's, you can be doing it as long as you like. I make lots of angst-ridden decisions.
Yeah.
And if you're tied up doing other things, you're busy. You've got a diary where you're dipping in and out.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's the reason. Leave it alone until you've got the time.
And I find I'm a sucker for old habits, and if I've got a trade running and it's a big trade, and I'll be like, I'll just load it up on the phone I'm taking to the gym with me, just so I can keep an eye on it.
Yeah, you'd be there on the treadmill.
You find yourself losing, you're not getting payouts. Whereas I found most of my payouts have come from trades I've placed once or twice a week on the second phone that I've left in a drawer or at home. I can't do anything about it. That is my best bit of advice: is do it on something that you can't access. Trade terminal at home on your PC if you're going to work.
Yeah.
Open it, leave it, set and forget. You can't revenge trade then.
Top advice.
Yeah.
So I always like to ask people, you've come here today to do this interview, it's been brilliant. Is there anything that I've not asked you that you'd like to get across or put out to anyone?
Oh, that's a good one.
When you kind of watch these interviews yourself online, is there anything that you go, I'd like to talk about that? Or is there anything that really annoys you that you see on these interviews?
That really annoys me. People not talking about their losses. I like watching a video. Sounds almost sadistic. Watching videos of people
Honestly,
who have had losses,
but
but to see how they've handled it.
It's realistic. It's exactly. So what do you talked about? You might have the long runs of 4 or 5 in a row, and treat them the same as the 4 or 5 wins. But how do you react when you're in that losing phase? What do you do to reset?
You've got to remember that you've back tested, and you've gone through the scenarios. And the scenarios have said you should expect, if you're going to have a bad row, it should last 4 or 5 trades. And if you're on your 3rd losing trade and you're going, this is crap, my strategy's crap, you have to just stop and remember, no, I could possibly have 5 losses in a row. I've tested that.
Yeah.
Not just go, well, I've got to change the technique or strategy. This is not working. You could equally have 5 wins in a row.
Yeah,
and you think you were
just
great,
in the
wouldn't you?
wrong trend
Yeah.
at the time, and it might just be wait, isn't it?
Yeah.
Find
And
the
it's
next starting block.
Just having that willpower to not enter a trade if you've just been stopped out of a trade. Not going, oh, I'm in a better position now.
When you're a Pompey fan, they've had, 5 games without scoring at some point this year?
Leave us alone, we're doing brilliant. It is a bit like that, to be honest. Pompey embodies the trading, but blue on the screen.
So
that's nice.
always the blue.
Just people not talking about their losses. People, it's luring people into the industry and giving it a bad name because people come in expecting it to be a casino where you are in control. It's not. The house wins, but you can have an edge over the house, can't you?
Are there any books or anything out there that have inspired you, or films that you'd encourage people to watch to help? Or
Do you know, Trading in the Zone was a brilliant one.
I don't know if that came up from Johnny, one of the internal blokes.
I think it's all good and well reading books that teach you how to trade. I mean, I find that a bit useless because you can't really apply.
It's got to be applicable to you, hasn't it?
Yeah, but Trading in the Zone is almost, I'd say 95% about the psychology of trading, and I think it's Mark Douglas, isn't it, the author, explains what he did when he was having terrible days and how he would learn more from actually winning and then losing as opposed to just losing constantly. He'd realise what he'd done wrong, stepping back and reflecting on what you've done effectively.
That's all part of the whole back-testing mantra, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, James, I've really enjoyed that.
Well, thank you.
I think it's been a wonderful interview, and there's lots of nuggets in there that I think people will pick up on. Seriously, I think you've come across really, really well there, and no hubris at all that we talked about. I think you're totally level, and I can see why you had the success.
Cheers, Clive.
Thanks, mate. Really
Appreciate
enjoyed
it.
that.
Thank you.